Hey everyone, Cynics here, and we've done it! The journey to 1 million subscribers is complete, and the world record for taking the longest time to get there is temporarily in my hands, as I created this channel back in 2006. That might seem like a dubious honor to some, but personally I take great joy in it. It somehow represents the truest sense of myself as an extremely stubborn person who can't help but have some deep, unrelenting optimism that persists beyond my own laziness. Many years ago, I made a video about myself talking about how I got into art and different aspects of my art journey, but it's time for a bit of an update. An update that seeks to probe for new observations by going back even further into my past, and at the very least, hopefully offers you all some vulnerability and perhaps a little bit of relatability. So, if you're interested, I'm just going to do a bit of the old Draw My Life from YouTube years past. Let's start with the color yellow. That's what I started with, after taking the lazy way into life, pulled forth from a C-section delivery, not for my own benefit, but my sister had left this side door open after her more turbulent entry into the world. But regardless, I was placed into the most vibrant yellow nursery room that you could possibly imagine. My parents had read in a book that bright yellow was supposed to make a child more creative and mentally stimulated, so this room was bright yellow from floor to ceiling. Anyway, throughout the years in my yellow incubation chamber, trends started to emerge. This kid is a potato, just as lazy can be. Too lazy to cry, too lazy to make any fuss, too lazy to try walking. My older sister would commonly just use me as a dress-up doll because what did I care? My mom was getting a wonderful workout from having to carry me everywhere while all the other kids were running about. But I figured that if I really had to be somewhere, someone would eventually pick me up and take me there. As my mom likes to tell me, the first time she ever saw me moving around with any motivation was on Halloween, when I realized they were just giving out free candy at every house. Now this was the 80s, and we were at the peak of the suburban middle-class lifestyle, and the Reagan-era deregulations on children's advertising hit me hard. I wanted everything I saw on TV, every game, every toy, every candy. I had a very strong sense of mimicry, so maybe consumerism just felt like the correct way to be a kid, looking at all of those other happy kids on TV. However, I didn't have a strong sense for what to actually do with my toys. I would usually just line them up in neat and orderly rows, everything perfectly spaced, and then just put them away again. I suppose that made me happy, some comfort in structure and organization. But perhaps I was just a bit deep on the old spectrum. Anyway, I can say I was definitely a needlessly terrified child. I only ever slept with my head under the sheets, peeking out at the world from the smallest opening. I couldn't fall asleep with the lights off, so they were always on, full blast, illuminating me in the comforting yellow of the nursery, which had been converted into my bedroom. Door closed, windows completely blocked off, fully protected from the aliens and monsters that lurk in the night. I could never quite keep that fear out of my sleep though, and through many a nightmare I became deeply accustomed to the shame of being a bedwetter. As time passed, some fears faded and new ones arose. The fear of social interaction became more relevant, being terrified of having to speak up for myself, absolutely incapable of ever making eye contact with anyone. Some habits are still hard to break. But I did my best to adapt over time. My mom was wildly social, joking and teasing with strangers, constantly being the life of the party. So I picked up on how to interact with the world through humor alone, which was great for the most part, but perhaps a bit hollow at times. That was fine though, I had other things to obsess over. My dad was working as an engineer back then on all sorts of defense contract stuff such as the Patriot missile. This let me indulge in a fixation for military hardware, which sounds a little dystopian in hindsight, considering I had a collection of Desert Storm trading cards. But this engineer lifestyle also exposed me to computers very early on. I absolutely fell in love with computers, starting from the age of 4, just navigating my way through DOS and the pre-Windows era to play all sorts of primitive games. I got to experience everything, learning to use a mouse when Windows 3 came around, getting my very own computer when Windows 95 rolled out, and even having access to the internet with my amazing 14.4K dial-up modem. This was a magical time. I felt born again into this new online world, stumbling into random AOL chat rooms, a preteen trying to flirt with Wiccan girls, cringily RPing in the Raiden orphanage, downloading wares, and becoming as elite as I could. Back in the real world, things weren't going quite as well. Everything was still extremely scary and confusing. I tried doing sports, but was comically undersized. In Little League, I would mostly just curl up and turn my back to every pitch. It was pretty embarrassing, but sometimes I would get on base, only because I wasn't keeping my eyes open enough to avoid getting hit by a bad pitch. I honestly hated it though, and halfway through the season, I mustered up enough stubbornness to just quit. Secretly, quitting things was the only time I ever felt any excitement. It didn't matter if it was good or bad, it's just the feeling of control. The middle school years were quite rough. My mind raced constantly, and I stopped being able to sleep at night. Just lying in bed, staring at the popcorn ceiling that seemed to dance and flow with its illusions of movement. Hours go by every night, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. I can't stop thinking about existence, religion, purpose, and the fact that I could feel my pinky toe touching the toe next to it. Why am I aware of this sensation? It brings me nothing but pain and misery. How could I ever hope to fall asleep when all I could feel was the touching of my toes against each other? I spent endless hours fantasizing about cutting off that little toe. Every night was the same, year after year, hour after hour, just lying in bed, not being able to sleep. It's the biggest thing I remember from being a kid, it's just the constant insomnia. Why must I have this sensation that I can't control? The sheer hopelessness of being a child with lots of thoughts and ideas swirling around will always lead to a point of resentment, and then to a point of rage. Eventually, as the years passed, all I could feel was hate inside, easily directed at any point of authority. I wished pain and death upon any teacher or just any person who dares to inflict control and authority over me. Were the thoughts that swirl into their conscious so much more important than mine? Why must I feel that damn toe? 7th grade was the last time in my life I ever did homework. I started to skip as many days of school as I could get away with. I didn't want to be smart, I wanted to be thoughtless and happy. Unfortunately, I also aged much slower than every other kid, and by high school I was the weakest and smallest kid in the class. I had lost any ability to play sports or do physical activities with my peers. So while all of my teachers were capable of exerting mental control, all of my classmates were capable of exerting physical control over me. Ugh, that toe was still itching and my inner rage was uncontrollable. All I could do every night was fantasize about death and violence, a complete edge case, wanting everyone to suffer. In the online world, my age and physical size seemed irrelevant, so I would seek out my people there. GameFAQs was one of the biggest forum sites for young people in the 90s, and I had found my place in the most toxic corner of it. Life, the universe, and everything. A place for little debate lords, trolls, and misfits. Yes, this is the same board that actually birthed Lulinks and 4chan, Something Awful, and all sorts of things. Almost all of the toxicity of the internet these days can be traced back to this message board. I felt completely at home in this place and would nurture the most toxic traits that had been building up inside. I became more and more hateful as the years passed, but at least I had a place where I could exert some power and control over others. I managed to subsist and make it through to the age of 18 without having done any homework still, just eagerly focused on my toxic yet powerful online life. It was hollow though, and I felt my toe itching again. Luckily, a door cracked open. A teacher had decided to give me a series of increasing punishments for not doing his little assignments. Let the stubbornness games begin. A one-page punitive essay? Not doing that. Double it? Don't care. Double it again? Still don't care. He gave me detention, I didn't show up. This led to Saturday detention, definitely not showing up to that. This played out for a couple weeks until he just said, "All right, you're not allowed in the class anymore." Great. I was sent to the principal's office. As the principal rambled on about something or other, wasted potential, what's wrong, what can we do to get things back on track, I realized this was it, the tipping point for my entire future. I wasn't even listening to him, but I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes. I was scared, knowing that my life was about to become irrevocably changed, but also excited, knowing a world of difficult unpredictability was finally at hand. The principal dismissed me, expecting me to go back to whatever the next class was, but I just walked straight to the parking lot and floated in my car all the way home, knowing I was being birthed into something terrifying yet new. I would never visit that school again or talk to any of my classmates again. Needless to say, my parents were extremely upset, but deep down, I knew that I chose the most positive outcome to that tipping point. I started to slowly let go of my toxic online habits. I began reading books constantly. I opened up to new hobbies like art. I started to rebuild myself completely. I had never really learned to do anything. I was still terrified of social interactions and being outside, even more so than before because I felt like more of an outcast now. But I could at least start working at these things from a new starting point. Luckily, my parents didn't kick me out despite the constant threats to do so. I knew I can never articulate myself well to them, but they must have felt some sense of pity for my constant pleading for them to just trust me and give me more time. For me, I just had to redo my adolescence. I learned to talk to people, I learned to go on dates, and I even started to find work in the art world. I, of course, had some massive setbacks in figuring out how to live, and there were some extremely dark years mixed in there, but progress was being made. Even on the darkest days when I was feeling a bit helpless, I could just wander outside at 2 a.m. and stare up at the infinite cosmos. I didn't want to destroy it anymore. I wanted to inhale the whole thing inside of me. Sorry, I meant for this to just be fun and silly when I started, but it got pretty dark. I don't know where things went wrong in my upbringing. Was it the constant validation I felt as an infant for not doing anything? Was it the Reagan-era marketing infecting my child brain with a need for rugged American individuality? Or maybe it was the countering ideas of obsessive Catholicism that did me in. I don't know exactly, but I think it was just the right combination of all of these things with a bit of autism mixed in there that really just fractured my view on reality. Or maybe it was just a yellow room. In the end, I was just a miserable kid who projected lots of negativity out into the world. But those things can be turned around. So if you're currently in a similar boat, at least take that as a piece of optimism to keep you afloat. If I had to give advice, I'd just recommend humbling yourself before the universe and focusing on understanding the concept of consciousness. Also, vulnerability is the most valuable thing you have, so work on expressing it with friends and family. Just remember, it isn't used for getting something from others like pity or sympathy or attention. True vulnerability is purely a gift you offer to others and yourself with no extra motive. Alright, I don't know how to resolve the direction this video has taken, so instead I'll just start closing things out. Whether you're new or old, thank you for supporting this channel. I hope I can keep improving the content I make here. I have a huge backlog of art videos and weird theories that I want to share with you guys, but I can, for starters, offer you this one little update. Paintover Pals will now have some short form content. Individual paintovers will be posted as shorts, and then don't worry, I'll still do compilations of a bunch of the shorts into proper episodes as well. Hopefully this winds up being the best of both worlds. Anyway, I have no idea what people will think of this video, but regardless, thank you so much for watching, and a big, extra huge thank you to all of the Patreon supporters as well. Alright, see ya everyone.